Hey, Rich, thanks so much for being a part of this podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Look forward to chatting.
I want to ask you a couple of off the cuff questions. What is the biggest challenge in your current job?
Well, that's a big one. I think that there's a number of challenges, right, that we face, that AT&T faces, that we face kind of as in the industry is government relations or external affairs, legislative affairs, whatever term you want to call it. But I think it's really about finding the right way to communicate and to educate lawmakers or policymakers or stakeholders on what are the most important needs, what are the biggest challenges, and doing it in a meaningful and authentic way. Right now, I think there's just, folks see it on the news, they see it they read the paper, they read it, online. There's just so much noise out there that I think as an elected official, it's a challenge, right, to discern what is being, what is honesty, what is being, upfront, what is real, what is, accurate information versus, what is just noise and what is not. And in the government relations world, it's really trying to find a way to break through, some of those barriers and tell an authentic story and tell it in a way that is meaningful and can have an impact and reach legislators. Right now, it's tough. I mean, that's just how there's a lot of skepticism on so much information that's out there. That's what I think a lot of just kind of holistically we're challenged with is how do you tell a story that doesn't get bogged down or lost in so much noise that's out there today. So certainly one that I think the industry kind of tries to find different ways and approaches to do it, but like anything, it's you got to have those relationships, you got to have that the meetings, you got to be in person and in front of folks to look them in the eye and have that trust and have that relationship with them. That's the way to really kind of break through it. How you do it, right? Whether it's some digital component or the old fashioned in person. I think there's different ways to do it, but I think that you got to have those relationships and have built that trust with whomever the stakeholder may be that you're talking to.
And how would you define a lobbyist in one word?
One word, storyteller.
Nice. If you had the opportunity to change one rule in the state government process, what would that be?
I don't know. It's a tough one. I think that that's a good question. I really don't know what the one rule I would change. I think that what happens right now is I don't know. That's a good question. I don't. Can we come back to that one? That's a good question. I really
Sure.
don't know. Honestly, I mean, I think that right now, you look at it from there's a standpoint of the rule in terms of how you or what your the requirements to engage with the legislator, right? With reporting, expenditures and what are permissible expenses and what aren't. That's one side of it. Then there's kind of the business, side of it from my role, which is certainly impactful. I think if anything, we just need to you got to ensure that there's transparency in the system, right? You got to ensure that folks know what's going on. I think that's what often is plighted against lobbyists or kind of the industry as a whole, is that folks think that there's a whole lot of lying or manipulation or backroom deals and all those kind of terms that we've heard. But the truth is a vast majority of this stuff is done out in the open, and it's just making sure that the public sees that and knows that and feels comfortable with the decisions and how lawmakers get to those decisions. And so I would say, as opposed to changing a rule, I think we just gotta make sure that the rules are set so that there's always transparency in the system, that there's always accountability in the system, and that folks don't feel like somebody's getting some special agreement or arrangement when things kind of as things develop. So you got to be clear and you got to be upfront and you got to be able to show folks what's going on. So they don't you can get past those, as many folks have heard, right? The cigars and backroom deals. And I'll be honest, I've rarely ever had a cigar to begin with in my life, let alone in a back room, and I've made zero deals in said back room. So I don't know where that came from, but it's certainly one of the things that makes me chuckle when you think about it. It's just that doesn't actually happen, but I think that it's really a metaphor for how folks kind of want to see, make sure that there's stuff is done out in the open and that it's done fairly and transparently. I think that's one thing we should have to maintain and ensure that we continue to do that.
Nice. What would you be if you weren't a lobbyist?
Honestly, I would probably be. I think if I wasn't a lobbyist, I would go and I'd be a farmer. And I know nothing about farming, and I know nothing about cattle or crops or any of that stuff. But I figured out if I could do anything, had all the money in the world to go do it. Yeah, that's what I'd do. I'd go and have a bunch of land and just kind of do my thing out there. But I don't foresee that ever happening. But that's if I could, sure, yeah, that'd be fun.
Nice. You're the second person this week who said they would like to go back to farming on the podcast. So it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I'm not going back to it. I've never been a farmer, right? So that's my problem it's like, just walking blindly into this thing. I don't know the first thing about it, but I like to pretend that I do. So yeah, maybe. So certainly something with my hands, something outdoors.
What was the most momentous thing in your career?
Mm. So I will say this, it's actually kind of not momentous as opposed to kind of life lessons, right? I remember, growing up as a kid, right, of being able to, have decent success in school and sports and the like. And in one of my very first jobs out of college, I worked for a state house campaign in Tennessee, and I put everything I had into it. I put all blood, sweat, tears, all into this thing. I worked for hours and hours and hours, and I was the way this campaign was set up. I was really the only paid staff person there. I was managing volunteers. I didn't really know anybody in this community, but I mean, I was out there just grinding for at least six plus months, and felt confident as we went into the election, and the guy lost. And I distinctly remember sitting in my car, and I'll say this, I remember sitting in my car. I was down at the polling place, and I knew he'd lost. Got my car by myself, and I just cried. I was just so upset, right, with what had happened. I had failed. I had, it just totally, totally kind of set me back. And I just couldn't believe that all this work for nothing, effectively, right? But as I kind of moved on past that, you look back on it, and it's like, that failure taught me so many lessons, right? If I had won that thing, all the things that I thought I did right, I would have assumed that they were right. I would have assumed that this approach was the right way, or this lesson that I did, it was right. I don't think I would have learned as much had I not. So I think that failure, frankly, honestly, gave me some things to look back on and say, here's how you can do it differently. Here's how you could have improved. Should have done it this way or that way. And in hindsight, it's always 2020, but I just don't think that those lessons would have been learned had the candidate won. I really don't think. I think I would have just thought, I did it great. Let's move on. What's the next thing? But that failure was one of the first big times I've ever really had that kind of upset, that loss, frankly, and until that point in my life. And I think it was a great learning experience, honestly.
And could you share what was the most important lesson you learned from that failure?
I think it was more, many of them were more tactical. It was more, I think at least in campaigns, a lot of people think, yard signs are it, right? You got to have signs up. And while I don't disagree, you got to really have, it's more about the holistic name ID, especially in races where you don't know the candidate. The candidate is new to the scene. You got to have one, the right candidate, and two, that the name ID. But it's not just built on signs and signs alone. We had a number of signs out, right, and yard signs and all the like, and those help. But you got to find multiple avenues, right, to tell your story, multiple ways to reiterate and reinforce your story, because on campaigns, I think people that are you're working on them, you think the whole world is paying attention to exactly everything that you're saying, and that every up and down, right, is everybody feels it too. And the reality is no, they don't, right? Most folks are not paying attention to your campaign. They're not paying attention to the everyday ups and downs of what happens. Most folks, frankly, are they're going to work, they're going home, they're feeding the kids, they're going to bed, right? They might catch this, that, or the other every now and then, but they don't feel the ups and downs like you do. And so they don't hear the same message, right, that you do. You think you've heard the message 1,000 times, so everyone must have heard it, right? Like, how could they not vote for this candidate? Listen to what they're saying, right? Well, the reality is that most people aren't listening to what they're saying, and you just have to find different ways to tell that story, whether it's online, whether it's in person, whether it's signs, whether it's knocking on doors, whether it's social media, you name it, right? You just got to find ways to continually repeat it. And it's just as soon as you think that it's like you're gonna, your ears are gonna explode if you hear the speech or hear the message one more time, you got to keep going because others simply just they haven't.
What is the best compliment you have ever received?
I think the folks have said I've that very adaptable, can kind of figure out what's figure out the problem solving and the challenges. So I think that folks say I'm creative or very flexible. I'm always shocked, right? Because I think in my head I'm not, but it is a skill I think that is critical, right, for this industry, is to be able to solve problems, to be able to adapt to your environment. In the job I've got now and many passion, right? You can go and meet with one group of one audience, right? Whether it's policymakers or community, whatever it may be, that have one set of facts, one view, one mindset, one political slant, and in that afternoon you're talking to a totally separate group. You got to be able to wear both hats and have that flexibility and that adaptability to know your audience. And so I think when I've heard that, it's always kind and appreciated. I think for me, I just try to just get up and do my job each day and go home, get 2 kids and a wife and yard to cut and all those kind of things. And so there's also just the realities of it. And but I do appreciate it and appreciate when folks say those things. But it's a tough job, right? It's a stressful and taxing job, but I think that it's a job that when you look back on it, especially at AT&T, been able to do a lot of really, really impactful things in the community and across the state that wouldn't have otherwise, right? So you just got to take the good with the bad. When folks say you're flexible, you're adaptable, you're a good problem solver, I enjoy that. I appreciate that. That's always something I value.
Nice. And did anything surprise you when you got into government relations about the job?
Honestly, I think the way at least my mind works is very linear, logical, right? I don't think that I realized how oftentimes in politics, I realize it pretty quickly, right? But how oftentimes in politics, logic and reason are often not the decision-making factor, right? You look at it from a business perspective. Hey, I need to go and invest X dollars into this market. And it's going to produce this return. Makes sense, right? You go forward and do it. That's not always the same rational thought, right? That occurs in politics. It's you kind of got to realize all the variables and all the other factors that are at play. It's this bill is being held up because the sponsor has some other bill that's out there that somebody else doesn't like, and And so you kind of get all these other third party kind of variables, if you will, come into play. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, the most rational thinking thought, right, that we're all on board with, everybody kind of agrees with, isn't what sees the light of day. And the frequency with which that occurs can sometimes was eye-opening. But that just goes back to my original point. You just got to continue to stay on message, continue to tell that story, continue to tell that narrative as to why whatever you're advocating for or against is the right thing. Because as soon as you think you got it going, as soon as we're set, we're all, it's going to happen, right? The election is going to occur, or the vote's going to occur, or whatever it may be. It doesn't, right? So there's something that comes up, and you just got to be able to adapt, right, to whatever that scenario that comes out for you.
I'm going to switch gears here. If you had an opportunity to have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would those be?
I think I would go with the past 3 presidents, all 3 of them.
Nice.
Biden, Trump, Obama. Let's all have dinner together. Let's see how that shakes out. No, I mean, I think that folks in those roles is just it's I'd love to just kind of get a sense as to how they think and what they think, and you can also I find CEOs of large companies. I'm always shocked at, like, how do these folks go to maybe like on Saturday, are they outside cutting the grass or like what are they doing? I mean, like, those are the things I've always been curious to kind of know, like, these jobs that are just so demanding and just require so much time and energy. Kind of how do they look at the world from a standpoint of do you plan your family vacation, or does someone like how does that how did all these things kind of occur? I don't know. It just seems it's interesting. So kind of anybody in that realm, but I think that it would be interesting to the last two presidents to sit down and see what they had to say. And you might come out with a bit more gray hair than I've already got right now after that dinner, but it would certainly be interesting, that's to say the least.
Well, that's a very interesting insight you have. I mean, I'm curious to now. Now I'm curious to know what are they doing on Saturdays. Actually, that's very true.
Yeah,
Uh, if you had a time capsule to go back in time to any era, which era would you pick?
I have to go back in time, can't go forward in time, right? Um, let's see. So, I mean, I think so. I think that somewhere in right, 1800s, 1830s, right? And I say that because I don't know if folks here are a fan of the show Yellowstone, the prequel, right, 1883, when they're on the Oregon Trail. When you think about, just when I think about it, right, the guts that it took for someone to say, hey, what my scenario right here is so bad, I'm gonna go put all my family in a wagon, we're gonna go trek across the country for the opportunity for a better life, for better for better land, for better opportunity. Man, I just took a lot of guts, right? And I'd just be curious. I'd want to see it. I'd want to be kind of part of it. And certainly there's some hard times and hardships that occur, but I mean, I look at it today as if you did that today, it's like saying, hey, you've got a spaceship. You can go to Mars. You can take all the property. You can have everything you want. But by the way, you got to get there on your own. And you got to fly the ship, and no one's here to help you. Like, I mean, would you do it? And it's crazy when you think about the risk and the guts it took to do that. So I'd enjoy seeing that in person.
Nice. Let's go back a little bit into your past. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up, and did you have any interest in policy or politics back then?
Yeah, so I was grew up here in Metro Atlanta, South Forsyth High School, actually, for those from Metro Atlanta, and then I went to University of Tennessee. Growing up, politics and stuff were always kind of a topic point in our household. At least, my dad. It was something that I could relate to him with, as he'd watch the news and provide standard dad commentary on the news in the world, right? But it was a way to kind of interact with him. And then when I went to school, it was I actually wanted to be an attorney, and had told doing a pre-law degree, but I thought I was talked out of not doing this. You do a political science degree, it gives you more options. Well, by the time I was a junior or senior in college, I think I was tired of being poor, right? So I was like, I'm not going to law school. I can't keep this rate up, right? Where it's you got $15 in your checking account overnight. We're gonna get a job. So that's kind of from there. I've been doing campaigns and political stuff really out of college, and began at worked for the Technologist Association of Georgia, doing government and public affairs for them nearly a decade plus ago. I've been at AT&T. In fact, it'll be in July 22nd. Have been at AT&T for 10 years, and so I've had really had a career so far in in kind of the public facing space, the government relations space since the beginning. And it's certainly been one that I've enjoyed, and certainly one that is one where hey, there are no 2 days that are the same, right? There's going to be things that are to come up, and you got your to-do list, and rarely do I ever actually get through the to-do list that I start with at the beginning of the day, because something else kind of comes up in between. But it's fun. So, but I've been really kind of around the politics, the campaigns. And like I said, now at AT&T for 10 years. I started at AT&T as an external affairs manager, where I had kind of a region of counties in actually South Metro Atlanta. And then in roughly, I think it was 2015-ish, became a director and kind of managed that team of external affairs managers. And then it was, I want to say it was, trying to think now, 2019. Got promoted to assistant vice president, and have kind of picked up the regulatory stuff and now the legislative stuff as well. So it's been a good career at AT&T thus far, and it's been a great company to work for. A lot of opportunities and a lot of things that, like I said, I wouldn't have gotten to do elsewhere. So it's a great place to be able to impact the community, and impact the place I grew up, right, where my home is here, as well as do something I'm passionate about with respect to politics and policy and community engagement.
And which college did you go to? Tennessee?
And then I went to University of Tennessee, so I catch a lot of grief being back here, in Georgia, having not gone to UGA or a state school, but I grew up in Georgia, went there, came back effectively. So, but it's I always get tell people you went to Tennessee, and at least in Georgia, you kind of get
Oh, I
frowned
see.
upon of lately. But I've gotten used to the ridicule and jokes. But no, it's good.
Nice. So after college, what was your first job?
That's the first jobs I actually worked for the Tennessee Republican Party for, I guess it was, I don't know, however many, a year or 8 months, something like that. It's funny, you look back, I'll tell you, I made $24,000 a year, right? Didn't even work a whole year. It was $2,000 a month. And at the time I was like, hey, that's better. I'm gonna have more than $15 a month in my checking account, right, each week. So I was happy to take it. And that's what I would tell, folks that are young, right, is, take that opportunity. Is $24,000 a year, especially nowadays, a livable wage? No, I mean, that'd be tough to get by on. But at the time I was a single guy, had an apartment, and that was about it. That was my really only expense, I think, at the outside of utilities. And so and I worked all the time, right? So if you're coming out of college or about to enter the workforce, take those opportunities that come. That maybe they don't pay as great, maybe they're not the best, but they're an excellent learning opportunity. It's a great place to kind of get your feet wet, and honestly, it's more than anything else, is a great opportunity to build relationships. So with that role, right, I helped state house campaigns, and it was and the like. And so you're able to kind of engage with different folks and meet folks, whether it's in business or in politics for that matter. But you kind of got to take it if you want to do it. Those first jobs are tough, and I worked for Congressman Tom Price here in Georgia in his district office for a number of years, and it is it's a job that, I mean, again, you don't get paid a ton of money, but man, you learn so much, and so you kind of got to take just take the realize you're not going to get a huge salary maybe on day one, but you got to have those experience and kind of do that grind. When I look back, I think, if there were maybe one thing I would have done differently, I would have gone to DC. I think that would have been certainly cool to have gone up there and worked in a congressional office as opposed to here in the district. But the truth is, I've always been a hometown kind of guy, and loved Georgia, and enjoyed working here, and families here, and the like. And so you got to do what's right for you, what's right for your family, but you got to be willing to take that risk, and maybe take a job that isn't going to pay what you might have hoped it would have paid, but you do that for 6 months to a couple of years, however long it is, and the doors open up pretty quickly if you do it and do your job and do it well.
And is that something you still think of doing sometime in the future, like going to DC?
No, not now. That
Okay.
time is past, right? I got I got an 8-year-old and about to be 10-year-old, and those it's that ship has sailed. But I mean, it is. But if I were 22, 23, 24 again, single, or even if we didn't have kids, right? I think then yeah. But I think that that being said, there's a lot of these jobs, right? A lot of these government affairs jobs, they do end up in DC one way or another. Whether that is the first job or even kind of the most senior position job, they tend to land in DC, and certainly something that if you're entering this field, you got to think about, right? Is that something you'd ever want to do? But to each their own. I think there's great opportunities up there, but I've enjoyed and continue to enjoy living right here.
Nice. And is that something you would advise, like someone who wants to get into government relations? Do you think they should first go to DC, get that exposure, and then come back into state?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that it's once you get to DC, I think a lot of people get up there and they stay there. I don't know a ton of folks that go up to DC and frankly come back. I mean, it does happen, but that's definitely more the exception than the rule. I would tell folks that are at college, make sure if you're going to do it, start with trying to intern at your congressional office, your local congressional office while you're junior or senior. I actually interned for John Linder years ago for a summer, and then in college I worked for the Knox County mayor's office. And I would say that those internships initially, right, really open up those doors. Because when you graduate, right, you're one of many people that all want to go to DC or go work in these offices. Start out as early as you can and get an internship, get a co-op, get whatever it may be. I was able to get college credit, I think, if I recall correctly, for working in the Knox County Mayor's office. So I only had 2 or 3 classes, and the rest of the day I went to go work there. And so, but having that federal government and at the time local government experience, I think kind of diversified me. And then I went to, like I said, the Tennessee Republican Party. So you kind of have that state, local, and federal, all those boxes checked, and you really want to kind of spread out where you've worked with respect to government relations, because that's what companies hire. At the end of the day, they hire people that have worked in Congress, worked in state government, and have those relationships, and have kind of seen the world from the opposite end of the spectrum. That's who we hire, right? Those are the folks that you want to hire. So grind it out, and while you might not get paid a whole lot, you just got to wait till you can kind of flip the script and go get a job at a company or with a lobbying firm or whatever it may be. But people want someone that's got experience, having worked for state government, worked for a legislator, worked for a member of Congress, or mayor, whatever it may be, prior to becoming a lobbyist. I'd argue that's probably one of the most important job prerequisites that there are out there for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it's guaranteed or have to do it, but I would say that it sure does help.
Mm-hmm. And at what point did you step into the world of government relations?
I mean, I guess it was, I went from the kind of the campaigns and the like. So it was really at the Technology Association of Georgia. I was when kind of engaged at a meaningful level, where I was down at the Capitol, where I was, working with member companies, understanding whatever the policies or issues may be. So, I mean, it's been, I guess it was 12, 13, 14 years ago at this point, but, it kind of took those steps and kind of worked doing the congressional races or campaigns, and then working for members of Congress and all the like, that kind of you're able to check those boxes and move there. So when I came to AT&T, I was able to have, both public sector and private sector, in terms of, nonprofit experience, before I became here. So kind of really want to try and, just like I said, have those options, work in those different, entities where you can kind of get the exposure at either different levels of government or nonprofit side or whatever it may be, because that's what I think helps, right? That gives you that exposure, and it gives you that experience from a different mindset than maybe a company's going to come at it from. And we want to hire folks that are, that can have seen the other side of the coin, if you will. And I think that's important, and it helps you to right, when if you're member, worked on staff, and you had some lobbyists, somebody come in that kind of gave you their pitch about what this, that, and the other, and you saw it right kind of on the regular basis, you can see what works and what doesn't work. You can see the approach, right, that folks that resonates and doesn't resonate. So you at least know kind of from the, hey, here's, I remember this guy came in and they did it this way, and it was a great pitch, right? Or this person came in and it was, their approach was not the right approach, right? And you can learn from that, and translate that when you go to the private sector.
Mm-hmm. And with AT&T, what kind of policies are you currently working on? And tell us a little bit about, what is so exciting about working for AT&T? So
broadband, I think are the big kickers, and everything that kind of spurs off of that. A lot of conversation the last 2 years around federal funding that's coming down to states, the allocation of those dollars to deploy broadband and connect homes that locations that currently are not connected, and then what's coming down the pike, which is even more money through the infrastructure funding, through the BEADS allocation, the workforce component that comes along with the digital equity component that comes along with it. So there's a lot of dollars that are flowing to all states right now, or about to be flowing to all states, to support this broadband deployment. We've been working with the state, with all kind of interested parties to make sure that we structure these programs in a way that encourages the deployment of broadband and does it in an efficient and effective way. So it's really about creating flexibility and adaptability for networks to deploy, so that you can do it in the most efficient manner. It's also about finding ways that we're not either kind of double dipping in terms of funding and paying for areas that have already been overbuilt, or already have connectivity, but that we can focus on, the areas that are in need, and do so in a way that, like I said, put these dollars to the best use as possible in the most efficient way. And that's been, frankly, that's been a bulk of the world for the last 2 years here at AT&T, at least through my role. But also, we work with the Public Service Commission. We work with legislators on a number of different pieces of legislation that are certainly impactful to AT&T, and certainly ones that we want to be part of these conversations. But the broadband is by far led the way with time, energy, and all the effort that goes into it.
And do you still get energized by, or let me rephrase the question, what do you get energized more by? Is it the policy or the politics?
It's a good question. Honestly, I think initially it was the politics, but over time, as I've kind of gotten older, it's the policy, and even more so, I enjoyed kind of the strategic kind of operations, right, of the mix, right? How do you develop a game plan, right, to engage on a particular issue, and then how do we advocate, right, for the right policy, right? What are the changes that need to be made or not made in a particular proposal? The politics, can, like with anything, can be frustrating, just given, like I said, the many different variables. But we've got a good team here, and they do a good job of managing the politics, and I try and keep the path moving forward with respect to what are the right policies, what's the right strategy, what's the right approach, and how do we engage in the most meaningful and impactful way.
With that, I would like to ask you a question on what do you think are the two do's and two don'ts of lobbying?
I think the most important thing, obviously, is honesty, integrity, telling the truth, right? If you don't know the answer to the question, just say you don't know the answer, right? Say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you, which leads me to the second thing, which is follow up. When you say you're going to get back to someone, get back to them, right? That's how you build trust. That's how you build those relationships. You can go in and meet with somebody and tell them what they want to hear, or tell them, some fabricated story, and it might work the first time, but eventually it's going to get caught, and once that occurs, then they're not going to listen to you at all, right? So you need to be upfront and tell your position. You just need to have the right argument, right? And a lot of times folks think that they need to not be truthful or honest. It's because they don't have a good argument to justify why they're doing or what they want to do. Understand what it is you want to do, and then be able to articulate it in a way as to why it's important and how it can be impactful. If you have the right case, if you can make the right argument, you don't have to be, circumvent the truth, or manipulate whatever the facts or the numbers or whatever it may be. You can just state it out front, but say, here's why we believe this, or here's why we think this is so important. This is the contributing factor, and here's the numbers that we see. And but at the end of the day, you just got to be honest and upfront and follow up. People, they're not going to work with you very long. If you say you're going to do something and you never do it, you'll find yourself bored pretty quickly, spinning your thumbs pretty quickly, because no one will return your phone call. If you follow up, if you do what you say you're going to do, if you look people in the eye and are upfront with them, then honestly, people will happily accept, not happily accept, but at least accept bad news, right? Things that you don't want to hear. If you're like, listen, this is how it is. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is the reality of the facts of how we see it, or how it impacts us. I'd rather be upfront and honest with you right now, than either one, spring it on you, or just kind of go disappear kind of thing, and not ever follow up with you. So if you tell people what the truth is, and what the impact is, or how you see it, or what's going to happen, or all those things, then they prefer the bad news over no news, frankly.
Well, I think that's a very good way to conclude this wonderful podcast. Rich, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.